Hey guys, thanks so much for coming back. Today I wanted to talk to you about something that we're seeing in the market quite often right now, and it's going in firm. What are firm offers and what does that mean? So I wanted to educate you guys a little bit about what it means to put in this firm offer, removing our conditions, what um, things you need to look for when you're out there looking at houses, and then maybe what are some of our backup plans when we're doing that. Okay. So basically, right now, in a market where it's on fire and we're seeing multiple offer situations, pretty much all the buyers that are going in, they want to win. So by winning, that means that they're going to be removing their conditions in their offer. We also call that a clean offer. Okay. And in a perfect world, obviously we would have those conditions in. Those conditions are there to protect the buyers. Okay. Now, basically, in some markets, we're seeing these offers getting accepted with full conditions. And then we'll see some where we'll have our conditions in, but we could spend more on the property to entice the sellers to accept our offer. So, for example, if a house was normally going for around 400,000, maybe we would offer 425 and keep our conditions in. And sometimes that would certainly work depending on the market. And then what we're seeing right now at this moment in the beginning of 2022, that most of the offers are having no conditions. So what does that mean to go in firm? And what do I mean when I'm talking about conditions? So basically it comes down to your financing condition. This is typically your financing condition and your home inspection condition. Now, when we're talking about financing condition, that kind of comes down to two parts. So what we want to do is we want to make sure we have our approved mortgage from our bank, and we want to talk about what the appraisal will look like as well. Okay, so it's the appraisal and the approval. So basically, when you're going to a bank and you're talking to them and asking, what is going to be my approval number, so for me to purchase a property, and let's just say they come back to you and say, okay, you're pre-approved for 600,000. So then when we're going to look at properties, we know that we can offer up to 600,000, and we know that your bank has approved you at those numbers. Okay. If they approved you, I should know, if they've approved you, let's say a year ago, you definitely want to stay in touch with the banks and you want to make sure your numbers are up to date. Okay. So let's say you're approved for 600,000 and we're out looking at houses, then that's the number we know that we can offer on a property. Now, let's say we're looking at a property and we need to offer a little bit more because we know that's what it's going to take to win that property. And let's say we want to offer 625,000. So one thing for sure, you could obviously check with your bank. Maybe you can check with your bank as well to see, do I have the extra cash that I can top that up? So I'm approved for 600, I'm paying 625. Well, 25,000 is going to come out of my pocket. So for example, when I bought my house many years ago and I paid 262 for the house, my approval at the time was for 260,000. It's almost crazy saying those numbers. And we had to pay 262 for the house. So I put in the extra $2,000, but that's definitely something you need to check with your bank with and see if that can get, is that's allowed for you. Okay. So that is one of the things that we look at is our pre-approval numbers. Okay. And then the second part of the financing is your appraisal. And that's a big thing right now because in the market, we have very low inventory, meaning there's not very many houses on the market. So when we sit back and we're doing our homework and we're looking at a house, and let's say we want to spend $600,000 and offer that on a house, I'm going to look at other properties in the area that are comparable, and I'm going to see what those sold for. So I would say a few years ago, I could look back and I can see what they sold for, and I know typically what this house would sell for. Right now, in a market with low inventory and people paying higher prices for these houses because our supply is low but our demand is high, then we need to make sure that where those numbers land and if we're comfortable with that. So for example, if we're going to offer 600,000 on a house, I'm going to do my homework and I'm going to check and see what have they sold for recently. And if I'm looking them up and I'm saying, okay, well, they look like they're going to be around 550 because that's what I'm seeing, then I need to be able to tell my clients that if the appraisal comes back low and the appraiser looks at these comparables and says, Well, the last ones were about 550, but you offered 600. So as the bank, I'd only want to give you the 550 for the house. You have to pay out the difference. You've put in an offer with no financing condition to check all that first, then you're committed to that. Okay. So you need, now there is a couple other things which I'll talk about in a second, but you do need to be prepared for that. All in all, we've been talking to a lot of our mortgage brokers, and the appraisals have been coming in and they are strong and they do realize where the market's at and they take all those things into consideration as well. But there are a couple things that you could do as a backup option. So if your appraisal comes in low, you can talk to your bank about either appealing it or ordering another appraisal. If you needed to, possibly in a market that things are going crazy like they are right now, then maybe wait a couple weeks, see if the comparables have changed, and then go back to the appraiser and say, now this is worth more than what you saw last time, so can we adjust our numbers? So there might be some different options there that you can look into. Another thing is that what if at the end of the day, they come back and they say, okay, you offered 600, the house is 650. The appraiser is not going to budge on those numbers. What are my options? Because at the end of the day, you put in a deposit and you've committed yourself by putting in these firm offers. So you will want to talk to your banks or your broker, and you can talk to any of us. We've got some great referrals, and see if there's some other options. So for example, we've had to, and not based on, sorry, the appraisals, let's say, but we have had some where they turned around and said, okay, you know what? I'm going to look at B lenders, or I'm going to look at private lending, and I'm going to do that maybe short term, get the ball rolling, get my hands on the property, and then I'm going to readjust later. That all being said, you do need to make sure that you're budgeting some extra money for that. Okay. So you always want to keep that in mind. And also, just going back to when I was talking about the comparables, right now, again, because the inventory is really low, there's not a whole lot on the market. It's actually made our jobs really, really difficult. I've talked to other agents. They said, Tammy, I've been doing this for 30 years. I feel like I don't even know where the numbers are at anymore. And it does make it really hard for us because we know you turn to us for that advice. When I'm looking at some of the comparables, sometimes there's hardly anything out there. I'll go back to the last 19 days and I'll look at something that is very similar to compare to, and maybe there's only 2 or 3 houses that have sold in the last 3-4 months in that area. Sometimes I've been seeing that they've had large gaps, or the prices are really scattered. I've seen some up to a $300,000 difference. So what are we supposed to do? And at the end of the day, you have to be comfortable with your numbers. Okay. You need to know, what do I have to work with? Cash in the bank, HELOC, any other funds that I'm able to pull out if I really wanted to get this property. And if I was in a bit of a pickle like this, then what is it that I can do? So being prepared is obviously going to be very, very key. The other part of the conditions is the home inspection. So first of all, we always want to tell everyone we are not home inspectors. So as much as we are very experienced and we have a trained eye, we can't be held accountable for the things that we don't know. That's not our job. That's why we do like to hire the home inspectors to come in. But in a world, again, right now, where let's say we're dealing with firm offers and we have to skip that, then we're obviously going to do the best we can. And we have a couple tips and things that you could definitely look out for. So we'll want to make sure that you're weighing out the pros and cons. So when we're going through a house, we're going to be looking, does it need, let's say, some waterproofing? Is that a maybe? Because I've seen houses where it's hard to tell and it looks like there might be some signs, but maybe we should budget that in the price just in case. Or do I have the extra money to do that if it's needed at the end of the day? How old are the windows? Again, are we going to need to budget for that? When I have our clients and we're out looking at the properties, we'll sit back sometimes and say, okay, so if I'm going in with conditions, but I'm going to raise the price of the house so it's more attractive, as opposed to having the lower price and going in with a firm offer and taking on the risk, and those costs might come up later on. And those are the things sometimes you have to think about as well. When we're going through the houses, basically what we do is we want to look at the major items. So there's obviously most houses, you're going to need some caulking, maybe some grading around the house and so on, moving your downspouts away from the house and those type of things. But I want to know what are the major items, the ones that are going to cost me more money down the road. So I like to know and figure out as best I can is, what is the age of the furnace? What is the age of the air conditioner and the roof? A lot of these you can get sometimes by seeing them. Right now it's winter time. There's snow all over the roof. It's hard to see. So we'll go ahead and maybe we'll talk to the agent and ask them. Let's just say, for example, it's someone who has moved to a nursing home, or maybe they've passed away. There's no children involved. They don't know the age of the house. There's unknowns. Sometimes there's things they don't know either. And if that's the case and it's all covered, like I said, with snow, then you'll want to budget for it again. Okay. Going back to what I mentioned with the windows, checking out the age of the windows. Are they the original windows? Are they cracked or broken? Are they something that we need to budget for as well? Another main important one is the foundation. And that's probably one of the ones that scare most people, of course. So when we're walking into the house, we're always trying to see if we can smell anything, any kind of moldy smells. We're looking for any sort of cracks in the foundation. Do we see any mold? Do we see any efflorescence? So efflorescence, if you're looking at the foundation, or you'll see it even on some of the walls where you can see like a white salty stain, that could be that there's been some moisture there. That doesn't necessarily mean that water is going to be come flooding in, but there is obviously something happening there. So are they small fixes? Do we do some grading outside, downspouts? Is there water landing right there at the house that we need to take care of? Or do we need to go ahead and budget for that waterproofing again? So these are the things you'll want to be careful with, okay? You're going to want to make sure that you're looking for. The one thing that we don't usually get to see is in the attic. And reason that we check the attic is because we want to know what's the insulation like in there. But does that insulation contain vermiculite? So vermiculite is an asbestos that was in the insulation, and that can be tested. You can take a sample or have a professional come take a sample and get that tested. If there is vermiculite in the attic, then there's certain measures that you can take, and there's certain professionals that can come in and have that all removed. So that I'd say is the one area that's a little bit harder. The majority of our houses don't typically have them, but I have seen it and we have come across it. So it's something you'll want to keep in mind. And one of the big things I would say to take away from all this is don't forget, as we're putting in our firm offers, a lot of these sellers are doing holding offers and having offer presentations, let's say a week later. That gives us a lot of time if we wanted to do a pre-inspection. So I know you pay for that, but if you know that this is a great house, this is the house you want, this is the one that you're willing to spend the money on, and then you might want to go that extra mile and get that pre-inspection done, okay? And then this way you'll have some peace of mind as well. And basically at the end of the day, it comes down to just absolutely being prepared with what could come up, keeping that in the back of your mind. I think that that's one of the things for sure. And then also financially, making sure that you're prepared with some extra finances in case any of these items do come up. I hope this helped a little bit, because right now we're in a market where things are crazy and people are putting in these clean, firm offers. And I just want to make sure you have a really good understanding of that. And feel free to reach out to any of us at any time if you have any more questions at all, okay? Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you soon.